Hi everyone, Assalamualaikum. So today I just wanted to share with you guys about some great information, so basically from the Quran and also from the Hadith stated about the Ruqya, and also informations about scientific achievements and also technologies from the past that is achieved by humans. So this is something about the Ruqya. So Ruqya is something like in layman's terms is something like a mantra or something like that. So where you basically say a word, something on water, it actually affects the water, and then you drink this water, and then it actually has a healing effect on this water. So this is what a Ruqya is. So in Islam, there is something there's a concept of a Ruqya. So we call it Ruqya Sharia. So why do I want to share this with you guys? Because the science behind Ruqya Sharia is very nice. That you can actually influence the properties of water just based on the words that you say on the water. So how does this happen? So I just wanted to share with you guys about the science behind this, because those science about properties of water that is affected by vibrations is not really well known by humans. Well, there's also some studies about it. It's just that it's not that in the mainstream physics science studies. So, so before we want to know about the mechanisms of how the mantra Ruqya actually works, so we can actually dive deep inside how the snowflakes actually forms. So if you study about the snowflakes, you can notice that the snowflakes is actually influenced by certain kinds of humidity, heat, temperature, and also vibrations on the snowflakes. It actually shapes the forms of the snowflakes that the water vapor actually forms into the shapes. So the snowflakes has basically a hexagonal shape. Excuse me for my English. So this shape is actually formed, is very sensitive towards vibrations. So same goes to the characteristics of the water of any liquid molecules of water. So what happened is that if you recite, let's say, Al-Fatiha, because Surah Al-Fatiha in the Hadith said that it is a form of a ruqya. It has a ruqya effect. So if you recite Surah Al-Fatiha onto water, what happens to the water is that it will rearrange itself, to become in a hexagonal shape, and then it forms like the snowflakes formations. So this is what will happen onto the water if you recite Surah Al-Fatiha. And if you recite a lot of other things, let's say any other parts of the Quran that also has a ruqya effect, it would actually make the water change its shape, molecule, bond. So this is something about the water. So we're basically talking about how you want to neutralize poison effects in the past videos, how you want to neutralize toxins and everything. So everything, if you want to neutralize those stuff, you can actually play in with the properties of the water, the liquids that will basically engulf the toxins. So this is how mantra, well, in Islam is Ruqya Sharia, actually can actually give a healing effect because of the properties of water. So the properties of water that actually influence the toxin that it engulfs. So once you drink this water, it actually gets into your system, your body, and then it engulfs the toxins inside the body, which makes those toxins, by theory, by chance, it actually makes the toxin to be sort of neutralized, and the toxin could not actually work well. In other words, it actually stops the oxidative stress of the body. So this is what the water actually does to the toxin. So this thing is actually, you can study this thing based on also scalar wave frequencies. So let's say if you use scalar wave frequencies, it is said that it also had the same effect, which is it reduced oxidative stress. So this is what this is what the ruqya actually does to the water, and also as well as scalar wave. So I needed more studies about the scalar wave research. So, but based on some claims, it stated that the scalar wave actually protects you from oxidative stress, which is like the effects of the poison. So the poison actually causes oxidative stress, and then if you use scalar wave, it actually affects by chance. It means that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So because it's really sensitive, because water is really sensitive towards vibrations. So you may have another forms of other vibrations when you actually drink the water that is being recited with Surah Al-Fatiha. And also you can also have a different kinds of vibrations. Let's say if you play in scalar wave frequencies, so like the Schumann frequencies. So if you play in with the Schumann frequencies, you can it would by chance protect you from oxidative stress, but sometimes it doesn't work because water molecules is really sensitive towards vibrations. So this is what is believed, the effects of the scalar wave. But anyways, you guys should not actually confirm this thing yet, because I'm still studying about this thing. You should not confirm that scalar wave actually protects you from oxidative stress or protects you from poison. So, and then I just wanted to share with you guys about some neat information from the Quran. So this is something about the hyperjump technology. So just so you guys know, because now we've heard a lot of news about geopolitical news. I don't want to actually dive deep down inside there. So there's a lot of technologies that uses hyperjump technology. Like, let's say you have countries that develop hyperjump technology, which is the it's called the hold on, what's the word? exotic propulsion system. So what a hyperjump technology does is that you can basically accelerate from zero acceleration. Suddenly you accelerate towards like a few Mach of acceleration instantly. So this is something like a hyperjump technology. In the Quran, it's already mentioned in Surah An-Naml. So the surah stated that قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب أنا آتيك به قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفك فلما رآه مستقرا عنده قال هذا من فضل ربي ليبلوني أشكر أم أكفر. So what the Quran states is that, so there's a person who says, who knows the knowledge from the book. He says that to Prophet Solomon, I will bring the throne towards you before you can even blink your eyes. So, and then فَلَمَّا رَآهُ مُسْتَقِرًا عِنْدَهُ قَالَ هَذَا مِنْ فَضْلِ رَبِّي لِيَبْلُوَنِي أَأَشْكُرُ أَمْ أَكْفُرُ. So, and then when Prophet Solomon actually saw this in front of him, he said that this is from the favor of my Lord to test me whether I am grateful or ungrateful. So what this means is that hyperjump technology is already available in the time of Prophet Solomon. So what the hyperjump technology does is that it can actually accelerate you, and then it actually dilates the time. So it causes a time dilation due to the ether effect, the compressions of the spatial compressions of the ether, and then it causes the person inside the field bubble to experience a dilation time, which means that the person can do things, a lot other things, in a very short period of time. Let's say in a period of time before a person ever blinks your eyes. So a person, the rate of the eye blink is about like a few fractions of a second. So it means like in just a few fraction of a second, this person can actually travel back and forth from one place to another, and then they can actually bring the throne of the throne towards Prophet Solomon before Prophet Solomon can even blink his eyes. So I basically wanted to share with you guys about this thing. How do I know about this thing? How do I came to know that this is a hyperjump technology and stuff like that? So just to share with you guys, I did some research about this topic. So for the past, like, I think about since about 4 years, around 4 years already, about this research. So what I found is that hyperjump technology actually exists, and then there's a lot of countries actually develop hyperjump technology. So this is why you can see that certain countries, they had the upper hand in terms of the technology of like stealth jet, let's say stealth jet, excuse me. They have the upper hand in terms of like how many Machs the stealth jet can actually travel and stuff like that. So one of the jets that they develop is a hyperjump technology. So it's called the hyperjump technology because it actually creates a false gravity just in front of you. So what the false gravity does is that it actually makes your body fall towards that gravity. This is what it calls hyperjump technology. So I've been doing the experiment about the hyperjump technology for the past few years already. So the results was actually really interesting that this technology actually exists. You can develop an ionocraft, and then what you notice that based on the ionocraft, how the ionocraft floats in mid-air is that it's basically creating a false gravity just above it, just above the ionocraft. So the ionocraft actually falls towards the false gravity. So that's what it's called. The term is that it's a false gravity. So artificial gravity. So in my past research that I did, I managed to actually develop an artificial gravity. So to develop an artificial gravity is quite simple to do so. So it's actually easy to develop an artificial gravity where you play in with the electrodes, the capacitors. So it's a form of like a capacitor that you actually play in with the geometrical shape of the capacitors, and then it actually creates a net force of a gravitational well. That's what it's called. So, and then what happened was that anything that is, it depends on the strength of the gravitational force. So if the gravitational force is strong enough, it would actually make everything fall towards that point of gravity. So this is how it works. So the Quran already mentions about this thing. I think this is a very important and a very interesting, it's a very interesting scientific fact to share with you guys. So So based on my research, what's been done is that I found out that everything that comes close to this system that I created, the ionocraft, actually fall towards a point. It's not really a point, a position where the gravitational field is formed. So this is something about the hyperjump technology. So once you know about how the gravity works, so gravity actually dilates time. So which means that if you have, because it's due to the fact that it's a compression of the ether. So the compression of the ether makes you have the ability to move faster than those who are not in the field bubble of the ether compression. So this is how things work, and then this is how you can actually achieve hyperjump capabilities, while at the same time you don't feel the effects of g forces, you don't feel the effect of, let's say, the time actually moving fast. But what happened is that from your perspective is, if you're inside an aircraft that works based on hyperjump technology, so what happened is that you would seem to see everything around you, away from those ether bubble, is moving slow. So it's moving slow as compared to those inside the ether bubble. So how does it work is that, so it creates a field bubble that makes you able to move faster than a normal speed of time. So which means that it plays in with the rate of time, the time movements of time. So this is basically a technology that is already available since the time of Prophet Solomon. This is actually stated in the Quran. So I just want to share with you guys over here because it's actually available since the time of Prophet Solomon. But the knowledge about it maybe probably had been lost, and then it's already recovering now. So where we can find, we know that how certain thing works. So in order for you to understand how this ether works, it's very important to know the ether effect, and also to understand how certain kinds of sacred geometry actually works. So sacred geometry is actually important. So just in case if you guys were asking, was like, how do I know about this thing, and then what is my background in terms of education and stuff like that. I mean, what is my background education and stuff like that. So just so you guys know, my background education is in nuclear science. I basically studied and graduated in the field of nuclear science. So you can say that I am a nuclear scientist. You can say that uh, sort of like I didn't actually work in the field of science research, but I still do some research personally. I did still do some experiments. So in other words, you can say that I'm also a scientist, or a scientist, which is a nuclear scientist. So I did some research. One of my research that has been done is about basically focusing more on the effects of the ether, which is the Quran. So I studied about the Quran. So the Quran stated that the hyperjump technology is actually exist. So, and then once you study about the science of hyperjump, you would notice that this is a fact and a reality, that the gravity, false gravity, artificial gravity, whatever we want to call it, the artificial gravity actually dilates time. It causes the time to actually move much faster, so that the person can do a lot of things inside the field bubble. And then you also have I did some research, quite a lot of research as well. I also did some research, mainly study about the Islam and everything based on science. So this is some of the research that I done. So this is basically just to share with you guys some neat information about hyperjump technology. So hyperjump technology actually exists. So just again, I just wanted to emphasize on this, just in case if you guys were asking, was like, how can I do a lot of know about this stuff, everything. So because I basically did some research, my own research about this issue, and also my background education is in nuclear science. So I studied a lot about the nuclear science. So we heard a lot of news now about scientists, everything, but I didn't want to go deep dive inside that. So nuclear science is a science that studies more about subatomic particles, and then when you study about the ether, you would find that the subatomic particles is actually just a wave, a light wave. So which means that if you basically smash all those subatomic particles together, it would become something that doesn't exist, because it's just based on light waves, frequencies. So above that, above nuclear science, is actually the studies of the fields, the ether, the medium that governs everything. So the ether is actually a medium that governs everything, that actually causes us to exist. So this is what the ether is. So the ether is actually what causes gravity to exist. It's because of the fundamental properties of the ether. So the ether is something that actually moves towards a null point in counter space. So there's like a space and counter space. So in the Quran it's stated that Alam naj'alil arda kifata, haven't we created the earth to become like everything that is attracted towards it? So a counter space. Earth is created as a counter space where everything is get absorbed and attracted towards it. So this is how Allah terms gravity. Gravity is not a field, but it's what something does. This is how Allah termed the gravity inside the Quran. This is how the Creator actually explains, Alam naj'alil arda kifata. So haven't we created the earth that everything gets drawn towards it? So it's a term that everything gets drawn towards it. This is how Allah mentions gravity inside the Quran. Everything gets drawn towards it. So this is the effects of the ether. So because because without the ether, there's no subatomic particle exists, everything. So the study of the ether is actually above nuclear science. So once you dive deep down into nuclear science, you would get to a point that everything is actually based on fields, and then it's actually the ether that actually governs the subatomic particles and everything, electrons, and also everything is actually waves, fields, everything. So, so in the past, I was actually doing some of my research about this hyperjump technology. This is basically a very interesting technology to develop. You can also develop the hyperjump technology based on this ionocraft, and then there are also some scientists who actually develop this hyperjump technology, but they term it as the ionic wind technology. So what it means is that they created a form of a drone that what happens to the drone is that it's actually falling towards the artificial gravity, the false point of gravity, because due to the fact that the capacitors, the geometrical capacitor is asymmetrical, so it creates a field pressure that makes the drone wants to actually fall towards the artificial gravity, the false point of gravity, instead of falling towards the Earth, because the false point of gravity is stronger than the Earth's gravitational force. So this is what happened. So so there's a system that is created that once you actually develop this thing much more effective, it gets to a point that it would accelerate so strong that it becomes a hyperjump. So which means that you can also study this thing. You can also see this effect. If you Google on YouTube, you Google this thing or you search on YouTube, ionic thruster. So what happened to the ionic thruster is that at the point where you actually turn on the switch, it simply just floats up there. So what's going on is that it's actually falling towards the counter space. That's actually a form of a small hyperjump. So the stronger the power, the stronger the voltage and the current that is applied to those system. So the faster the hyperjump would get. So and then because this system is actually not really you can say that there's a lot ways that we can actually preserve the energy. So there's a lot of other system that we can actually design to build where you can actually preserve the energy while at the same time create an effective hyperjump effect. So so this is the things that the technology that is actually available, and then a lot of other countries had already been developing it. And then they called it this they call this technology the MHD aircraft, magneto-hydrodynamic aircraft. So it's based on the Mercury vortex engine. So this Mercury vortex engine would actually cause the Mercury vortex engine is based on the movements of the ether in the counterclockwise. So the movements of the counterclockwise actually creates a field pressure, a low field pressure above it, so which causes the craft to actually fall upwards. So this is how things work. And then they also have two types of anti-gravity. Excuse me. So this is something just to share with you guys. So you guys can find there's a lot of interesting scientific facts that are available in the Quran. So the first thing that we just discussed is that about the ruqya. Ruqya is something like mantra or something like that. So whatever that I said, the words that I said, it actually translates into a geometrical shape of the sound wave that once you put it in the, it's called a Cladini plate if I'm not mistaken. So it actually shapes in a form of like certain geometrical shape. So the best words in the Quran, the best words that you can even say in this world is actually the words of the Quran, because it has the best geometrical shape of sound wave. So this geometrical shape of sound wave affects the characteristics of water molecules, and then these water molecules would actually by chance would actually have an effect that it actually engulfs the toxins inside the body. It also engulfs the toxins inside the body, and also would by theory would also stimulate cellular repair and also cell regenerations in the body, because it's due to the shape of the water. But anyways, this thing still needs to be confirmed about how it actually works. I just wanted to share with you guys over here. You guys had to study about this yourself. So but in general, the vibrations actually affects how the water molecule shapes. And then you can also find a fact from the Quran stated about the hyperjump technology. So hyperjump technology is not a simple technology that has been built. So this is why in the Quran stated that قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب أنا آتيك به قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفك, because it states that those who had the knowledge from the book. So in this Quran, it stated that the book, like the previous revelations that were revealed to humankind, probably based on my research, the previous revelation to the prophets before Prophet Sulaiman, probably Allah had already teach human beings about sacred geometry. Because if you go to a lot of the religions all around the world, some of the religions that you find in their scriptures, it stated a lot about sacred geometries, the power of numbers, the power of prime numbers, everything. And then what's important about this is that in the hadith, it stated that Allah is uneven. He likes uneven numbers, which means that Allah is one. One is an uneven number, and Allah likes numbers that is uneven. Let's say 1, 3, 5, 6. So this is because if you study numbers, the numbers that are uneven has a very special characteristics in science, in math, and in science. You can find that the Fibonacci sequence is based on the prime numbers, everything. If I'm not mistaken, it's based on the prime numbers. It's based on the uneven numbers. So this is the imprint of Allah. So Allah created everything based on what He likes. So Allah created the universe based on what He likes. So if we study the universe based on sacred geometries, we know that certain numbers, everything, that you can find that every, like the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, everything, it actually pops up in every place, even in our creation, in us. We have the golden ratio in us. There's the golden ratio in flower petals. There's golden ratio in the universe. So these are the important things, sacred geometries that is going on around us, and also it is thought that the knowledge about sacred geometry has been revealed in the past nations, not just sacred geometry, but knowledge about numbers, math. Math is thought to be a revelation instead of we create math. Humans don't create math. So based on my study, math seems to be, I mean, some parts of the math seems to be a revelation by Allah towards the past nations. So this is why you find a lot of the past nations, they play in a lot with the golden ratio. They play in a lot with the sacred geometry, everything, because it's a revelation by Allah. And then in the Quran, it's stated that قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب أنا آتيك به قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفه. It clearly states that the one who had knowledge from the book, I will bring it to you before you can even blink your eyes. So it clearly states out that there's a revelation in the past that actually teach you a knowledge that you can achieve hyperjump technology. Because if you study about hyperjump technology, you would know that the only way to achieve hyperjump technology is by understanding sacred geometry. So sacred geometry, and then once you study sacred geometry, it is actually a lot related to a lot of the religion that is in this world. Let's say you go to a lot ancient religion in this world. I'm not stating that those religion are actually the true religion or stuff like that, because Islam is the true religion. So what is stated in the Quran is that once you do the research, the theory actually points out that Allah had revealed sacred geometries and math towards the past nations. So but what happened to those past nations is that the message of monotheism actually changed through time. So instead of worshiping Allah, they worship false god. But some parts of the knowledge about sacred geometry still survives until now. This is why you can find a lot of the knowledge about sacred geometry exists in some other religions out there, ancient religions out there, everything. So it's due to this fact. So the Quran is stating the fact. So the Quran is stating the truth. So قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب. So it means that it's a past revelation. So you can find this evidence that there's a religion that actually focus on sacred geometry, because it was revealed to their prophet in the past nation, to their prophet on the past nations, that about sacred geometry, knowledge about sacred geometry. And then some knowledge of the sacred geometry actually survives until now, but you can find that the message of it actually changes. So instead of like saying that Allah is one, they said that there's a god of like the god of the sun, the god of whatever it is. So that's actually wrong. Allah is only one, because the one who reveals the sacred geometry is from Allah. So we should actually appreciate Allah and not actually worshipping other false gods. So this is the power of the Quran. And if you study the Quran, and then about sacred geometries, if you study about the science of the hyperjump, so you'll find that there's a relation, that sacred geometry and hyperjump technology. So this is what the Quran actually means. So I just wanted to share with you guys. So this is some message to you guys, just in case if you guys are not Muslims. So you guys might want to actually study Islam, and also you guys might want to look into Islam and see it as a way of your life, because in this life we're basically being tested out by Allah. So whether we will be successful in this life and the hereafter, or probably not really successful in this life and the hereafter, because if we failed this test, so we will end up being burned for eternity. And then we don't want that to happen, because I see there's a lot of good people out there. We don't want this to happen to us. We don't want to let ourselves to get burned in hellfire for eternity just because we failed the test. So So what the answer for this test is that in this life we needed to worship Allah, and also we needed to believe that there's no God except for Allah, and then the Prophet Muhammad is his messenger. So there's no God except for Allah. There's nothing besides Allah that are saying to Allah. There's only one God in this world, in this universe. There's only one God. There's no other gods. If there are many gods, there will be the gods will be fighting with each other, and then nothing would happen, because there's only one God. There's Allah alone. This is why Allah can govern the entire universe in harmony, because there's no other gods out there, because there's nothing besides Allah that is a God. So if there's like many gods anywhere in the universe, whether in the universe or in anywhere, so of course there would be a destruction on the universe, because every god has a different what things that they want. So if there's many god, there's only one god in this entire universe. So what if you ask, like, is there anything above God? No, there's nothing above God. Okay, so this is basically just to share with you guys, there is nothing above God. So above the seven heavens, there's the seven heavens, seven layers of the skies, which is the space, seven layers of the space. Above that, there's basically the Sidratul Muntaha. And then above that, there's the Arash of Allah, Kursi of Allah. And then above that, there is nothing. So nothing that is besides Allah. It's only Allah, and then Allah created us, and then there's nothing, no God except for Allah. So this is the only test that we are basically being tested out. We're basically being tested out just to acknowledge that there's only one God, there's no God except for Allah, and Allah had already sent in the messenger to remind us about this fact. So we needed to acknowledge that there's no God except for Allah, and then the Prophet Muhammad is his messenger. Prophet Muhammad, and there's a lot other prophets out there. There's a lot other prophets, including Prophet Isa. So you guys call Isa Jesus. Jesus is a prophet. Jesus is a prophet. So in Islam, Jesus is a prophet. Moses is a prophet. So, and then there's a lot other prophets also that we don't know. All of them have one message, which is to worship God and to basically leave back everything false god. It's just to worship one God, Allah, and to leave back all the false god. So there's no God except for Allah. You guys who are not Muslim, this is a very important message to you guys, because there's a lot of good non-Muslims out there. We don't want to put ourselves to be punished in hellfire for eternity just because we didn't acknowledge that there's only one God, and then the Prophet and all the Prophet is actually a messenger of Allah to remind us in this. We are basically being tested out. So this is basically just a message to you guys. I hope that by reminding this thing, Allah would also forgive me. And this is basically, I'm trying to do my best so that I don't want to be a part of those that has been destined for hellfire for eternity. May Allah destine that I won't be a part of those been destined to go to hellfire for eternity. May Allah destine that me and also you guys to be a part of those that are destined to go to heaven for eternity. We don't want to go to hellfire for eternity, so we want to go to heaven for eternity, inshallah. May Allah destine us to go to heaven for eternity, inshallah. I mean, may Allah destine that our predestination in this life and the hereafter are good predestination, which is that we can go to heaven for eternity. Because, so why are there a lot of non-Muslims out there? So, so the question, right? So God is one. There's a lot of messenger, just the same God, just the same message. Worship one God. Why are they non-Muslim? That is because that's the predestination that Allah had put towards the human beings, so that a lot of the human beings will end up to hellfire for eternity. This is a bad predestination. We don't want to be a part of that. So the mercy of Allah came from the messenger. So the mercy of Allah for us to actually free ourselves from this bad predestination only came from the messenger. So if we follow the message, which is to worship only one God, and we follow the message that came from the messenger to worship one God and to acknowledge that those are actually the messenger of Allah. So we're basically free from the predestination. Not really that free. So because we're not yet there. So but at least we free ourselves from being a kafir, and then we hope that we will die as a Muslim, so that we will not be burned in hell for eternity. So this is basically just to share with you guys. So just in case if you guys are not Muslim, please do look into Islam and then study Islam, and also you guys also want to basically do some research. Just just ignore whatever other people said about Islam are bad or something like that. Just forget about that. Study about Islam, because this might actually save you and also from the pre-bad predestination. I'm doing this basically. I hope that may Allah destine that I will be predestined to go to heaven, inshallah.